There is a comforting assumption that most people never question, the idea that manipulation should feel like an attack, like clear pressure, like an easily recognizable aggression. If that immediate discomfort does not appear, the conclusion feels simple: there is no danger. This assumption is exactly why intelligent manipulation works. The first sign does not appear as conflict. It appears as the absence of it. The first sign is a calm that demands nothing, yet leaves you unchanged no longer. There is no hurry, there is no pressure, there are no explicit demands. Everything seems logical, settled, obvious, as if reality has already been established and you are merely confirming it as you go. The intelligent manipulator gives you nothing to defend against, because he knows that defense is the only thing that can stop him. Biologically, your brain is calibrated to react to fast danger, to clear signals, to aggression. When these are missing, vigilance drops. When everything seems calm and rational, your mind assumes safety, and that is precisely where influence begins. Notice what happens inside you. You begin to speak more than you intended, to explain things you were not asked to explain, to add context. Not because someone pushed you, but because the space was left open. The second sign appears here. You begin to work mentally more than the other person. You clarify, you nuance, you repair. He listens, calmly, without urgency. Not because he is empathetic, but because every sentence you speak gives him information about what unsettles you, about what you justify, about what you feel the need to control. The intelligent manipulator does not lead the conversation through direction. He leads it through rhythm. After such interactions, you do not leave angry. You do not leave outraged. You leave tired, with a vague sense that you said too much, that you gave something away, but you cannot say exactly what. This fog is not an accident, it is a structure. The third sign appears when you begin to doubt your own reactions, not because someone told you that you were wrong, but because your emotion begins to feel out of place within the apparently calm context. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I'm misinterpreting. Maybe it's not really like that. These thoughts are not evidence of maturity. They are evidence that the frame is beginning to work. The intelligent manipulator never tells you that you are too sensitive. That would be too obvious. He says the situation is complex, that there are nuances, that things are not black and white, all true, but used consistently to dilute any firm reaction. Your emotions do not disappear, but they begin to feel suspicious. And when emotion becomes the problem, the behavior that triggered it escapes examination. The fourth sign appears when conclusions are constantly postponed. Nothing is clear, nothing is definitive. There is always something more to analyze, an additional perspective, a new variable. This complexity does not seek truth, it seeks the suspension of action, because action breaks the frame, clarity threatens it. Any firm decision begins to seem rushed, any boundary seems rigid, any clear position seems shallow. So you stay, you wait longer, you analyze more. And in this waiting, the frame becomes normal. The fifth sign is the dissolution of responsibility. Nothing is ever entirely someone's fault. Everything is the result of a dynamic, of a context, of a sequence of reactions. It sounds mature, it sounds balanced, but the effect is precise. No one can be confronted anymore. When no one is responsible, power cannot be moved. Over time, you begin to explain even your dissatisfaction using this language. Maybe it's also because of me. Maybe I didn't communicate clearly enough. These are not simple reflections. They are signs that the structure has been internalized. The intelligent manipulator does not need to defend himself, because you already do it for him. The sixth sign appears in the way you receive validation. It does not disappear, but it becomes rare, selective, inconsistent. After periods of neutrality or distance, a small sign of recognition feels disproportionately important, not because you need approval, but because the mind seeks stability. And when stability is fragmented, any moment of coherence feels valuable. This oscillation is not accidental. It is maintained with precision. At this point, you begin to adjust yourself, to say less, to avoid certain subjects, to censor your formulations before you speak them, not because you were asked to, but because you anticipate. This is the sign that the frame is no longer external. It is already inside you. When the first six signs are already present, there is nothing obvious left to observe. That is the trap. There is no escalation. There is no clear shift. Everything continues to seem stable, rational, functional, except you are functioning differently inside this frame. At this point, you begin to notice something difficult to articulate, but impossible to ignore. The fact that you regulate yourself before anyone asks you to. You no longer wait for reactions, you anticipate them. You no longer test boundaries, you adjust them in advance. This is not caution, it is adaptation. The intelligent manipulator does not need to correct you. The environment is already corrective. The calm tone, the lack of urgency, the absence of obvious emotional reactions create a contrast in which any firm reaction seems disproportionate. Not wrong, just inappropriate. And when a reaction feels inappropriate, you begin to postpone it, to soften it, to reframe it. The emotion does not disappear, but it is kept under observation, as if it needs to be validated before being expressed. This is an advanced sign of intelligent manipulation, when you begin to ask yourself for permission to react. At this stage, language changes even further. You no longer talk about what happened. You talk about how what happened might be interpreted. You no longer describe the experience. You analyze it. You place it in a broader context. You dilute it. This distance between experience and reaction does not come from clarity. It comes from a need not to break the frame. The intelligent manipulator never tells you that maintaining harmony is your responsibility, but everything around you begins to function as if it were. Another thing becomes visible here. The lack of conclusion stops being frustrating. It becomes normal. You get used to the idea that nothing is definitive, that every discussion remains open, that any boundary can be renegotiated later. This is a subtle form of stable disorientation. You do not feel lost, you feel suspended. And because there is no clear moment to say enough, you stay. You analyze, you adjust, you wait. Responsibility continues to dissolve, not because someone denies it, but because it is constantly redistributed. When discomfort appears, it is never clear where it begins and where it ends. Everything seems shared, contextual, relative. This is another confirmation that manipulation is active when there is no longer a clear point of address, only a general state that floats. At this stage, rare validation begins to have an almost disproportionate effect. A small sign of recognition seems to stabilize something, to soothe, to confirm that you are on the right path, not because you need approval, but because its absence has become the norm. This oscillation between neutrality and recognition is not chaotic. It is regular enough to keep you engaged, but unpredictable enough to keep you uncertain. And without realizing it, you begin to adjust your behavior so as not to lose that fragile balance. Self-censorship becomes almost invisible. You do not tell yourself, "I can't say this." You simply no longer feel like saying it. Certain thoughts no longer surface. Certain questions remain unspoken, not because they are dangerous, but because they seem unnecessary. This is an extremely clear sign, even if it is difficult to accept, when you begin to give up parts of yourself without feeling like you are losing anything. The intelligent manipulator does not reduce you through force. He makes you adjust until the reduction feels logical. At this point, the frame is fully functional. No active intervention is needed. No tactics are required. Everything runs through you. And this is exactly where the most dangerous illusion appears, the impression that you are in control. Because you choose, you adjust, you decide what you say and what you do not say. But the choice is already being made inside a delimited space, a space you did not draw. The seventh sign does not appear while manipulation is active. It appears when it begins to lose traction. That is why it is the rarest to notice, because it does not feel like a victory. It does not feel like a discovery. It feels like a quiet withdrawal, like something fading without announcing itself. There is no moment when you clearly tell yourself, "I understand everything." There is no revelation that ignites something. There is no dramatic conclusion. Instead, there is a stop, an old reflex that simply does not activate anymore. You no longer feel the need to explain. At first, this can seem insignificant, almost trivial. You say less, you leave sentences unfinished, you no longer feel compelled to complete them. But the difference is deep. Because this impulse does not disappear through willpower. It disappears through the absence of necessity. This is the essence of the seventh sign. You stop adding. You stop correcting. You stop preventing interpretations. You say less and you do not feel the lack, not because you have become indifferent, but because the mechanism that pushed you to invest has begun to withdraw. It is a subtle change, so subtle that if you are not attentive, you might confuse it with fatigue, or with temporary detachment, or with a period of emotional withdrawal, but it is neither. It is the absence of need. Until now, the frame worked because you had a constant impulse to maintain balance, to regulate, to clarify, to be understood correctly, to prevent rupture. When that impulse disappears, the structure does not collapse, it does not explode, it does not visibly break, but it begins to float, without an anchor. The intelligent manipulator does not disappear at this moment. He continues exactly the same. This is the important part. He does not change his tone. He does not intensify pressure. He does not become aggressive, not because he cannot, but because he does not yet feel a clear threat. He only senses a vague loss of access. Something is no longer as readable. Your responses no longer offer the same volume of information. Your pauses are no longer filled. Explanations no longer arrive automatically, not because you have closed yourself off, but because you no longer feel obligated to open yourself up. You remain polite, calm, functional. From the outside, almost nothing looks different. The difference is internal. You no longer fill the spaces. Silences remain silences. Sentences remain incomplete. You no longer feel the need to round anything out for the other person's comfort. This economy of words is not a learned technique. It is not a strategy. It is not a discipline exercise. It is a symptom, a clear sign that you are no longer trying to control the other person's perception of you. And this is exactly where the final shift of power happens. The intelligent manipulator relied on constant access to your internal process, to doubts, to adjustments, to justifications, to your tendency to explain before being asked. When that access is withdrawn, without announcement, without explanation, influence begins to fade. Not abruptly, not dramatically, slowly. At this point, small signals may appear, not confrontations, not accusations, but seemingly neutral questions that try to recover information, discrete attempts at validation, slight oscillations between closeness and distance, not because someone has become consciously aware of the game, but because the ground no longer responds the same way. The difference is that you notice these things without reacting. You do not overanalyze them. You do not turn them into evidence. You do not judge them. You see them. That is all. And for the first time, not because you protected yourself, not because you built walls, but because you no longer feel the need to be seen correctly. This is the position where manipulation can no longer function, not because it has been exposed, but because it no longer has leverage. Because there is no longer urgency to repair, there is no longer the impulse to clarify, there is no longer the need to balance. In that moment, a natural temptation appears, the desire to clarify everything, to tell the truth, to expose the dynamic, to put it all on the table. It is an old temptation tied to the idea that understanding resolves things. It does not. Explanation reactivates the frame. It grants access again. It reopens the circuit. Not because the other person needs it, but because you would return to the position of investing. Real power does not come from being understood. It comes from no longer needing to be. When you stop explaining, clarity appears without effort, not emotional clarity, not moral clarity, structural clarity. You see the mechanism, you see the rhythm, you see the attempts at adjustment, and you feel no impulse to intervene. From this position, calm emerges, not a comforting calm, a dense one, stable, hard to move, a calm that asks for nothing and promises nothing. Paradoxically, this is the moment when manipulation ends without officially ending. There is no finale. There is no decisive conversation. There is no moment of closure. Only a slow decline of influence. Because influence required your active participation, and that participation is no longer available. You do not leave. You do not break. You do not confront. You simply stop investing. For many, this stage is difficult to tolerate because it resembles indifference. But it is not indifference. Indifference ignores, detachment sees and does not react. At this point, emotions do not disappear, but they no longer lead. You observe them as old reflexes. You let them pass. You no longer turn them into arguments. You no longer use them to justify actions. This is true self-mastery, not the control of emotions, but the refusal to put them at the wheel. The intelligent manipulator cannot function in a space where emotion is acknowledged but not exploited. Because there is no urgency there, no repair, no silent negotiation, only presence. In the end, a simple observation remains. Power was never about defeating the other. It was about no longer allowing yourself to be defined by the dynamic he created. When your internal frame becomes more stable than the external one, the game closes itself. There is no satisfaction. There is no triumph, only a deeper silence, a different weight in decisions, a lack of urgency that changes everything. Emotional reaction no longer seems wrong, just primitive, useful once, inadequate now, and from this point on, there is nothing left to prove, nothing to explain, nothing to repair. only to choose where you place your attention and where you do not. The rest resolves itself.